Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. With me, as always, is my co-host, David Poole. He's the owner of Mid-County Farm and Feed and a general knowledge guy. He knows all the stuff that I don't. And today, I think we're talking about something important. I think we're talking about, what is it, David? What are we talking about?
Talking about maybe just looking at maybe a few like super common problems that the average gardener comes across at some point in their journey. We find these happen with people that have been growing forever, or find them with brand new people that experience a lot of these in their first season, almost always. Because
and you're gonna deal with them year after year, so you might as well learn, right?
But if you can learn the signs, you can learn some tips and tricks on what to do to mitigate those things, maybe take care of them without having to run off and buy something to, spray or do something was the end goal.
Oh dang! I gotta go to the store. I gotta get some neem oil real quick.
I gotta get the 7 dust or whatever. Gotta kill everything because there's one minor problem.
Yeah. So what are some of what's the most common one that you're going to talk about? And I'm sure that it probably is a problem across all plants, right?
The first one that comes to mind is a plant-specific problem.
Okay.
That really happens very commonly with tomatoes.
Okay, well, just a lot of things happen with tomatoes. Okay,
but one that happens that is somewhat out of our control in a sense. Sometimes it is user induced, and that's blossom end rot. Okay. So blossom end rot is where you've got like a really nice looking tomato plant. It's got tons of fruit on it. Then all of a sudden they start rotting at the bottom.
So that would have been where the blossom was, right?
Yeah, so it's at the very end. You could be a full-size tomato. It could be small ones, but you're going to start getting that blackish-brown lesion, and then that tomato is going to rot. Yeah. And the reason why that happens, it has to do with a missing nutrient. Okay. And that is calcium. So calcium is always talked about in tomatoes, how it's really important. If you look at very tomato-specific fertilizers, most of them will have calcium. Calcium is important for a lot of plants.
A lot of plants,
It's in a lot of soils, like your higher end potting or gardening mixes. I was kind of like looking at all the Fox Farms soil lineup recently, just learning more about them, and almost all of them have some form of calcium.
A bit of calcium there.
Yeah.
One thing that I like to do for putting some calcium in my beds is I save my eggshells. And I put them in a blender with some water, and I just pulverize them. I just blend it until it's a opaque white, fluid, and I just water my plants with it.
Do you know why you should probably pulverize it?
Because you're getting the particulates down. You're making it digestible, I would imagine.
Yeah. So if you just crush up the eggshells, crumble up and put them out there, you actually have to have microbes and soil life to break that down to make that calcium soluble and usable. So by breaking that down, it's almost like, it's not composting, but you think about how composting breaks down larger organic matter into finer, more material.
It's mechanical composting, essentially,
exactly.
right? Yeah, that's what it is.
You're breaking it down and making it, usable. So that calcium, ironically, a lot of times there's plenty of calcium in the soil in which your tomato plants are in. But the reason why we get blossom end rot most of the time is because the calcium is unavailable to the plant. And how that might happen is maybe we have a really rainy season. So if we have a lot of moisture, or say we're watering every day, maybe this could really be prominent for container gardeners, where they're watering more often.
Then they're washing out.
So you're washing out those nutrients that are needed, so the calcium is not in the root zone. It's not available for the plant to get. It might be there, but it might not be within the reach of the plant.
I see.
So that's one way that you can get blossom end rot.
That makes sense. And how does it look different? So if you're looking at the tomato and you see this, how does it look different from, say, a pest taking a bite out of it?
there's not going to be any hole. It's just you're going to see
Okay.
a color change on the bottom of it. It's not typically going to be. It's not going to be on the top. And, not really on the side. It's going to be
directly
on the
across from the stem.
lower portion. That's where you're going to start seeing that at. And also, like on the opposite ends, like if the soil is staying too dry and we're not putting enough moisture in there for nutrients to be able to move and be able to carry nutrients into the plant as it absorbs water, then calcium may be there, but it's not absorbable.
Right, it's not getting transferred.
Yep.
Right,
So
yeah,
that's the number one reason why blossom end rot happens on tomatoes. It's a moisture type issue. So a lot of times we have it, but you go and you go to a store, you come to wherever, and you find things that are labeled for blossom end rot. The two most common things are what we would call they call it a yield booster.
Okay,
It's essentially a liquid calcium.
Okay.
And you could take that liquid calcium and you could spray it on the plant. I think you do it once a week for 3 weeks. You're building up the calcium levels. They're absorbing into the foliage.
So you spray it on like
on
the
the actual
leaves and
plant.
on the plant.
Yep.
Okay.
You could also do, it's a synthetic fertilizer, essentially calcium nitrate. So you have a 15.5% nitrogen granular that is a calcium-based source. And you can do that, and it's a soluble fertilizer, so it can break down really quickly, and you're getting a quick injection of calcium in there. And then there's all the other ways that people commonly do using calcium-rich soils, garden soils. Maybe they're doing the eggshell trick. They're putting that back in there.
Yeah.
Some people are buying like oyster shell.
Yeah, that's a big one too. If it's white and chalky, it's got calcium
Oyster
in it.
shell,
Yeah.
oyster shell. While it's a big particle, but you can break it, but
You can bust it
it's
over the hammer,
hard.
yeah.
But if you rub your hands on it, there's it's dusty.
Yeah.
So a lot of times there are fines in there that would be the same as you pulverizing the eggshell.
Of course, yeah.
So. Essentially putting calcium in there and trying to make sure you have calcium from the start is how you can prevent that. And having even, consistent watering. That's the number one. I cannot, in the last 4 years, I haven't had blossom in at one time. And not to say that I won't, but...
No, you just said it. You just said, I'm big dog here.
No, but,
I'm the tomato big dog. I ain't got no blossom rod.
I'll probably get it this year in my soil trial.
okay.
So I've got 8 potting soils.
Oh, you're doing a double blind little study over here.
I've got from like our basic $3 potting soil all the way up to like our veggie and herb, Fox Farms. Got 8 different soils, same tomato.
You get that West End Wanda dirt.
Dude, it's actually, the experiment's going kind of cool. It's not going like I thought it was.
Okay,
So,
interesting. I can't wait to see the results of that.
Check out the videos. Maybe I'll put it in the link, the show notes. And,
Okay.
About to drop the second update on them. So it's been a few weeks since I did it.
I'm going to keep an eye out for that. You keep an eye out for that. Okay, so I feel like we've touched on that pretty well, the blossom rot, which you said. I'll never forget that. Now, what's one of the next most common problems that we have to deal with in the garden?
So, most prominently on tomatoes, and we have touched on this in previous episodes, our tomato episode, but it also can be an issue for peas, and that's stink bugs.
Stink bugs, yeah.
So,
stink bugs are just an overall,
nuisance.
I hate stink bugs, dude.
And it's one specific variety or species that's really the nuisance one, and that's the leaf-footed stink bug.
And they're big, and they'll eat all your stuff in a way that other pests won't. They'll just devour.
And, a lot of times you go out there and you look and you got beautiful tomatoes, and then you start seeing those little, like it's almost like a little blister. Mm-hmm. It's like a little bubble, and you can touch it, and it's kind of soft, but the rest of the tomato feels normal.
Yeah.
And that's from that little stink bug basically sticking it's a little...
It's proboscis.
In there into the tomato underneath the skin, and then you've kind of created that hole, and now that tomato is beginning to deteriorate.
And that's what I see in tomatoes when I grow them. I'll see a hole in the tomato, and it's really round, and it looks like some little cookie cutter shark just went yelp and took a bite out of it. Took like a little round bite.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, like when the stink bugs, it's just a tiny little injection, but a lot of times it's more than one on a single tomato, because we find does the most damage is the nymph. So if you ever go out and you see a small group of orange insects. They're an elongated orange insect, black and orange.
Do they kind of look like the assassin bug?
They do.
Yeah, that's
but
okay.
They're going to come in groups or clusters. Looks like a little gang attacking
It does
your
look
tomato.
like a gang, yeah.
And then a lot of times you'll look at them and you'll get close and they'll run to the other side. They'll kind of hide. But those insects are what become the large leaf-footed stink bug. And while the adult does damage, so does the nymphs. And they're a multi-generational insect, so you can go through a couple generations in a season. And even for people that use insecticides and stuff, there's no simple solution for those.
Yeah.
You have to take an insecticide and spray it directly on the insect.
And it's so I have my own issues with these little nymphs. They don't just affect the tomatoes, which they do, but they really affect any vining stuff I have. So when I'm growing cucumbers, they're all over that thing, man. They're all over the cucumbers.
Yeah, they'll actually, and like peas.
Yeah.
So in a coming up episode, we're going to talk about summer crops, but one of the pests, one of the few pests that you really deal with on growing peas is actually the stink bug. They'll actually stick through the pod and into the little pea, and they'll ruin your pea crop. Like it's
They can stick their little proboscis through a pea hole.
Yep.
And those are not soft, right? A pea hole is kind of like
Well, I mean, like when
it's
when the-
green
when the pod is green, it's soft. It's pliable.
Yeah.
So to me, honestly, like
that's just kind of impressive. I wouldn't have thought it's
the tomato has almost a harder casing.
It's kind of waxy.
Waxy.
It's waxy.
Whereas you don't have that
resistant.
with those peas. But so it's interesting to see. It's one, but if you look at when they come on, the pest pressure for stink bugs really develops in the hotter part of spring. So as we get into May, early June, and that's why like we're coming up on Good Friday. And Good Friday used to be like the planting day, no matter where it falls. That's when everybody was like, no more chance of cool weather.
Right, yeah.
Plant everything.
No more frost.
But as the temperatures become hotter so much earlier, and it just gets...
Hey, easy now. Don't talk about climate change or nothing. Easy now.
As it gets hotter, those pests are coming on earlier, and then if you don't plant your tomatoes earlier, then you're facing more pest pressure, and it becomes a far more challenging crop, and people get annoyed with it. So that's why you'll always hear us talking about, trying to put tomatoes in early, growing them up maybe in containers to a decent size before transplanting out, because they can be handled. They can take moving around, unlike some other crops. And it really helps to mitigate some of that without having to spray.
Right.
And then the other control we've talked about before too is soapy water. Grab them, toss them in some soapy water, let the surfactants smother them. I always tell people about
that's what I found out to do, because
the shop vac.
I sprayed my cucumbers last year because they had all those little nymphs on them, and I sprayed them with. I was going crazy, so I found an insecticide, and it killed my vine. The whole thing just killed my cucumber vine. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. And I could have lit this on fire if that's what I wanted to do, but
we know as average people and humans, and as most men who feel like they know how to do things, how many people can look me in the eye and tell me they read the label on the insecticide? Probably not. Most people are double strengthened.
Oh yeah,
and they're soaking it down.
Oh, I guarantee you that's what I did.
What they don't realize is there is what is called a pre-harvest interval time, and that's from the point you spray an insecticide on a plant, organic or not, how long you have to wait to harvest any fruit, or
lest you want to eat that pesticide.
And that's at that point that it says on there, if it's from the time you spray, 3 days. Peas could maybe be up to 21 days on some chemicals. You have to wait for it to be safe to eat. It doesn't mean there's no pesticide residual left in there. That means what's considered safe by whomever says that it's safe.
So let's just not even have pesticides. Let's just do that.
And that's part of the reason why we don't, because number one,
I'll put a little soapy water on it.
The multi-generational insect in that 3 to 5 days, most likely I have new ones. So if I go out there and I spray those and I get it on the plant, here I am waiting again and again. Right. So manual removal with the soapy water, or like the little handheld vacuum cleaner, sucking them up, dumping them into the soapy water.
Hey, if it's simple, it works.
You're breaking the life cycle, and the more you can remove from your environment, the less you might have next season that come back in your little local space.
So I'm going to tell you something interesting about the stink bug. This is from my experience. A lot of times on this show, we have talked about the health of the plant and almost it being able to defend itself.
Yeah.
So where my aunt lives in, well, she has a summer home in North Carolina along the Blue Ridge Parkway, right on top of a mountain. My aunt is rich. But they had, many years ago, they had a huge spruce blight all throughout the Smoky Mountains, and it affected like 80% of all the spruces. So when you're looking out, it looks different. It kind of looks, the hills and the mountains look sickly because it hasn't affected the fir trees, it hadn't affected the other pine trees, but it killed like 70% of all the spruces. So you have dead or dying spruce everywhere, and it attracted stink bugs, and they never used to have this problem. But now they had the stink bug problem is so profound. Where my aunt lives, they're in everywhere. If you look at the curtains, they're in between the plies.
Oh, wow.
Of fabric. Like you look and you see them. They'll be in the lights. They'll be in between fabrics. They'll be in cushions.
So what you're telling me, this is kind of like a locust takeover, but stink bugs?
But stink bugs, yeah.
Okay.
And it's
I think I'll take
and it's
a look.
crazy. It's obviously it's so much of a problem that a rich person can't even solve it, right? So it just goes to
Show
prove
you.
it just it goes to show you that when plants aren't healthy, then they'll get invaded, right? So
Makes sense.
just an interesting little aside there. With that out of the way, let's move on to another common problem in the garden.
This one's kind of a dual thing. We could look at it from different perspectives, but there's also, you see people that they'll come into the store, or they see they have an issue where they have tons of flowers but no fruit.
Yeah.
Or on another instance, maybe they have flowers and fruit, but their plants are dropping the fruit.
Okay. Not when they're ripe, right?
No, before they're ripe.
Okay, prematurely dropping.
Prematurely, like early on, midway through their life cycle, they're dropping that fruit. You know, the first one we're talking about, like flowers but no fruit, we've talked about this before as well. A lot of times that's timing. So we look at tomatoes. If our nighttime temperatures are typically above 75, at that point the humidity is higher.
Right.
And those flowers are not self-pollinating, so you have plenty of flowers and it's going to continue to bloom, but there's nothing to move that pollen, to complete the process.
Right.
So that's why timing on tomatoes is super important. Pepper's a little more forgiving, but at some point in time it gets too hot, and then the bloom's no longer set. So we find most of the time when we're dealing with people that are coming in with an issue where they have tons of flowers but no fruit, it's most likely a timing issue. So make sure you don't need to plant everything early, but get a local planting guide. I will drop one in the show notes for the Jefferson County area, but it's pretty close to most from here to the Metro Houston area. It gives you a good rule of thumb,
similar.
Of what you need to plant where, and kind of stick to that, and then if you're also taking notes.
And it's a pretty forging range too.
Yeah.
It's not like if you don't plant this on Thursday, you missed your shot.
No,
so,
it's not like that, but there's some of these things, and we go into fall, like you want to plant fall tomatoes, there's only like a maybe 4-week window.
Right.
Sometimes maybe even less than that. If you don't get them in the ground now, it's going to get too cool. And you're going to experience the same problem, but on the other end of the spectrum. So you got to pay attention to timing, and we find that most times when people come in and they're not getting any fruit on a plant, it's a timing issue.
So just prep, just work out your prep, maybe keep a journal, something like that. Yeah, that's my biggest thing is just keeping a journal.
Because then what worked and what you also, if you're kind of tracking your yields to some extent, not saying you should weigh them and I got so many pounds, having an idea of what years you had the most bountiful harvest, and then look at what you did different those years is drastically helpful.
Yeah.
On the other end, if you have fruit that's dropping, it could be one of a couple things. We talked about this in our squash and melon episode, where you have fruit that sets on and it starts getting black on the end, and it falls off. And the first thing that people jump to is it's blossom end rot, like the tomatoes.
Like the tomato, yeah. It sounds like it. So you're kind of describing
very,
the same
very
thing.
similar situation, but in those instances, it's actually a lack of pollination.
Okay,
You didn't
like
have
it
enough,
only got like half pollinated.
yeah, you didn't get enough pollination from the male flower to the female flower. It's unlike the tomato where all the parts are in one flower, the male and female. Your squash and melons have male flowers and female flowers, and you've got to have something to move pollen from A to B. And if you start seeing that, it's a simple solution: hand pollinating with a little brush,
little Q-tip, little brush, something like that. Yeah.
And once you do that, you're probably going to have a prolific harvest. Be ready to pick.
And that's something that's not like just super intuitive, because to me, I would feel like if a plant got enough genetic information to make a fruit, they're good.
Yeah.
That's just what I would think. I wouldn't think that they need more to make a bigger, healthier fruit.
I always thought the same thing.
Yeah. So it is non-intuitive.
And it's pretty easy to identify. Your male flower will typically be on a thinner stem. Your female flower, because it's going to hold and support the fruit.
Yeah.
It's going to be thicker stalked. It's going to have almost a little bulb on the end before the flower, because that's where you have all that energy, and it's going to push out and create a fruit.
Is this a function of like most berries? That's something that can happen to almost most berries.
I don't.
And by berries, I don't mean culinary berries. I mean botanical berries, right?
I guess it could be possible. Anything that requires like male to female pollination.
I was just wondering if it works that way for an avocado too.
Maybe so. In other fruits you have males and female. Like a lot of fruits require pollinators, so they need a different species that blooms to act as the male and female.
Right.
And I'm sure if you didn't have pollination, but in those instances you have male flowers, female flowers, and then you're using them to cross-pollinate each other essentially and get fruit on both.
Yeah.
So it's a little different because there's sometimes you may only have one male flower and the sea of 4 or 5 squash
That's what we
plants.
talked about with squash, right? Yeah.
So, and we only need that one. We can take that one and we can go to many female flowers and then boom.
It's crazy. It's that way for everything in life. Yeah. It's that way for all animals.
Yeah. And then, I mentioned about like just fruit dropping or falling off. That comes to mind more in, not so much in vegetable growing, but if you also at home are growing fruits.
Yeah.
This happens a lot with citrus.
Yeah, it happens with citrus.
Because if you have a younger tree, or if you have a tree that really flourished last year, and then this year it's coming on and it does set a bunch of blossoms and you get some fruit, but it starts dropping them. A lot of times it's dropping them because it can't support the amount of fruit it has on.
That's true. And a lot of citrus that we grow now are bred to be extremely prolific, and it can't even handle it. Like I have a bunch of citrus. I have an improved Meyer, and you have to cull it. Right, I have to cull it. If I let every single one of the lemons that it tries to produce, it's going to break. Also, I might have to just put an insane amount of fertilizer in there. I don't even know what.
A lot of people don't feed citrus, as many times as you should. Most people recommend 3 times a year, so that the nutrients aren't being supplied enough. And then when you have this bumper crop, then your tree goes into like a season of recovery where it might put on some. And then we have some people who are like, I didn't get any this year.
Yeah.
It's like, well, did it produce a ton last year? And they're like, yeah, it did. And it was like, it may have essentially overproduced. So it basically burned up all its resources.
Yeah, imagine how much energy it takes to produce a big, juicy lemon.
Yep, and then it's also growing.
Yeah.
So it's doing 2 different things. So you've basically expended all the resources, and now it's going through a season of recovery and rest. And then, the next season it flourishes again.
Right.
So sometimes you can prevent like fruit drop by like you're saying,
like culling. Yeah.
You get more high quality fruit. But maybe less of them versus a bunch of fruit that might not be as nutritious or as tasty, but then also you may eliminate the possibility of not getting any next year.
And that's what I do. That's what I do every time when the fruit starts coming in. I look at which ones are maybe smaller, and I just start culling the smallest ones, because what's going to happen is, if I don't do anything, I'm going to end up with so much citrus that I can't do anything with it anyway.
Because
so I just take my good little clippers and I just go to town, and I do it based on the branch, right?
Right.
I'm not going to cull 4 off of one branch and then leave all the ones on the other branch, because I want to distribute the weight pretty evenly across that plant. So yeah. Pretty good. Look, I'm giving some advice. Hey, look at that. Well, what do we got? Do we have any other super common?
We got one more. And,
Okay.
We'll kind of use citrus as the segue.
Which my citrus are in pots, by the way. So that's different.
Yeah.
But I have been giant pots, so I need to fertilize them even more.
So the last one is, this one still gets most people all the time. You go out, everything's all fine and dandy in the garden. You look at your citrus tree, it's putting on tons of leaves, it's growing new. Then you go out, and the next thing you know, there's holes in the leaves everywhere. There's leaves that are completely stripped.
Yeah. Or the crinkly leaf? You talking about that crinkle leaf?
No, like just on a citrus tree, you'll typically, you get just leaves that get eaten.
Yeah.
And then if you start investigating, you start seeing what looks like bird poop or on the leaves, and that's actually a swallowtail butterfly larva, caterpillar.
Yeah.
So some citrus are hosts to certain species of swallowtail, and you get holes on the leaves.
Don't we like those?
We do.
Yeah,
those are good.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you that you have this vast world of moths and caterpillars out there that are doing damage to our plants. Now, unlike those which you can find out in the day, or like on tomatoes, the hornworm, which you can see those in broad daylight. Most worms, when people experience, like they come out, there's holes in the leaves, they start looking around, they don't see anything.
Yeah.
Most of the time, those worms were there in the evening to nighttime hours. They've climbed up the plant. They've eaten what they need. They got their fill for the day, just like the hungry caterpillar, and goes back down. Rests during the day, shades itself to make sure it's protected from the hot sun, and then it repeats that process. So, or sometimes, depending on the type of worm, they find the perfect leaf. I found one the other day on one of my tomato plants. Hadn't done any damage yet, but he was underneath the leaf, just hanging on, and he was at the perfect angle to block himself from the sun and keep him from getting dried out. So when you see like holes in leaves,
I have this issue with my grapefruit more than the other citrus I have, and it's like something made a little trail in the leaf.
Those are different. That's a leaf miner. So
what it looks like is, it looks like my grapefruit leaf. If you imagine that it has layers, because this is what it looks like. It looks like it has like a soft green inner layer and then kind of a waxy outer layer. And for some reason, these things like separate those layers, and then I see little trails through them.
Those squiggly lines.
Yeah. And then my leaves crinkle up.
You got a flying insect. They come in, they lay their eggs underneath the surface of that waxy coating, and then when they hatch, they kind of eat around and they form those little squiggly maze-like lines. Yeah. And then they cause those leaves to curl, and sometimes they fall off.
That's what they did. I have all new leaf on my grapefruit tree this year.
But at the end of the day, when you see that, there are things that will kill leaf miners, but and it's almost impossible to prevent on a tree. When you spray something, what's usually used for leaf miners is actually an organic spinosad. Which was, if I'm not mistaken, somebody can fact check me because it's been a long time since I read this.
Get in the comments, fact check them.
I believe spinosad was found in a distillery of some sort in a Caribbean island. It's a bacterium, very much like BT, which is used very commonly in worms or caterpillar control. And it can kill a leaf miner, but the problem is that you have that waxy coating you're talking about. That insecticide or liquid does not get into there to where it can come in contact with that leaf miner. So we view leaf miners more as a cosmetic damage. Yeah. Because the plant, unless they like came and defoliated your whole tree and your tree didn't have enough to like push out new growth, then maybe, yes, you could damage it. But
these leaf miners, they if I wouldn't have been an intermediate gardener, I would have freaked out, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh my God, my grapefruit tree. But I was like, it's fine.
Yeah.
The tree's still it's still photosynthesizing.
The main
everything.
thing when you lose foliage, you lose its ability to photosynthesize as much.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I don't think I could count one person who's actually proven to me they've lost a tree to leaf miners. And I say that not saying that it isn't possible or that maybe in some areas that doesn't happen, but like the citrus grows well enough here that I've never seen that happen. So if you go out and you do find like on normal plants and you got holes in the leaves, go out there. There's the black light trick. You can use. I use the flashlight on my phone and a
black light trick. Yeah.
Yeah, like it can help make the worm like more visible.
Oh,
at
okay,
night.
okay, yeah.
I just use my phone and I shine it up underneath the leaves.
You're like candling an egg, but you're like looking for it.
Yeah, a shadow, and a lot of times I can find it. Or if I really investigate the area they've been, I can find them the next night in a similar spot.
I can just see you out there with tweezers, just picking off pests.
Just call the kid over. Hey, come get this guy, and he'll come get it, and he'll inspect it, and then he just throws it, and it's gone. If you got chickens at home, feed them to the chickens.
Oh, they love hornworms. I'll tell you that much.
Now, there are types of worms that obviously maybe the damage is so severe and it's so early in the season, maybe you do have to resort to some type of spraying or control method. Control should always be the last resort if every other option hasn't worked. But if I've got like tons of worms or I've got army worms on potatoes or whatever it might be, I might need to spray, and that's where BT can come in as an organic insecticide.
I feel like you're saying botulism or something, but
I won't say it right. It's like Bacillus thuringiensis.
Okay,
It's a bacterium that when a worm or caterpillar consumes it, to my understanding, it makes their gut kind of like rupture.
Oh, cool.
And they just die. So they have to eat it.
That's metal. Nature is so metal. Yeah.
But it's just a natural thing that occurred that somebody found in nature somewhere along the line, and now it's made into essentially an insecticide.
Yeah.
But again, those are last resorts, and you kind of got to weigh out your options of where you are in the season. If I got a bunch of worm and caterpillar damage and I've got most of my production off a fruiting plant for the year, sometimes I'm just going to pull it, and it's not worth dealing with.
Yeah, you're just you're maybe potentially taking away a breeding spot for that, so it doesn't become a bigger problem.
And if it's at the end of the season, no matter whether it's an organic insecticide or not, there's consequences for the soil, microbes, and other things that I could be affecting that I can't see. So really always conscious about that and really weighing out like where I am. Does the need for spraying outweigh my need for this plant?
Sure.
And so on. But I think those are kind of like 4 to 5 things that like I see on a daily basis this time of year as we're in spring. Plants are growing. They're starting to put on fruit.
And things to keep a lookout for,
hopefully those are things that will help you be more successful and know what to do when the time comes.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good list, very informative, and we didn't like overburden you, didn't give you too much. So hopefully you guys learned something. Come back every week. We're going to have more fire like this every single week. We'll have more tips and tricks for you each time. Go ahead and get us in the comments if you have problems that you think that we can solve. Let us know. We'd like for this to be a two-way street, you know what I mean? Talk to us anytime. But for now, we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for listening.